All right, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. Really, we're just going to touch on what Megan and I have been working on the past couple weeks. I know that you already are aware that Bridges did their community meetings in Nashville, Johnson City, and Memphis. And now we're just going to talk briefly about what we did in Knoxville and Chattanooga. So we met with Chattanooga on Monday, September 18th. It was a really small group, about 12 people were there. 2 were hearing interpreters, 1 deaf interpreter, deaf, hard of hearing, and then the rest were deaf and hard of hearing individuals. And we had a structure. We had the large Post-it notes all over, and then each one was numbered. There were 7. And so we went over each to make sure that people what we found out is that people really don't understand the difference between certification and licensure. And so, oh, somebody else came up. Hold on. Ah, it's Eric. Hey, Eric. Ah, another victim to help with the voicing. That was Lisa. Okay, so anyway, we went through all of those 7 questions and we let people write their answers on their own Post-it notes. And then after we left, people said they really wanted a second round. They feel like the interpreters didn't show up because the local interpreter center was not a neutral place. And so we're encouraging the community there to pick a neutral place to have it. And then we'll go back again and do the same structure, same presentation. So that's the plan. And then the next night in Knoxville, we had a large group. I think close to maybe even more than 40 people. Same structure. We put the large Post-it papers up on the wall, and the discussion was different. We noticed that the discussion was different. They were more concerned related to if licensure passes, are we going to have a shortage of interpreters? And Megan, I missed that. But
if they have certification, if that would be preferred over licensure. So figuring out which was the preferred licensure certification. Yeah. The discussion went really well. We had some differing opinions and things of that nature, but we just wanted to make it clear that, we're just in the beginning stages of this. We're gathering information and data for it. And basically for both meetings, there was strong support for licensure in both in Knoxville and Chattanooga. That's where we've been on our journey so far. Megan and I will set up a meeting in Jackson. We're trying to work that out. We need to finish up that part. We'll do a second round in Chattanooga. And then we think that, we've covered, we'll look in Chattanooga for the second round. And then we've covered Knoxville and Chattanooga, both of those places so far. Do you all have any questions? Related to the summary that I just gave?
Can everyone hear me? This is Eric.
Yeah. Perfect.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. If you could raise your hand before you speak, it would help the interpreters a lot, please.
Okay, Leonard, then Eric. Leonard, go ahead.
In the Tri-Cities, Johnson City area, was a similar concept. We needed clarification for licensure, registry. It was about half and half. Probably about 10 people were in favor of licensure and maybe around 11 preferred the registry. So, it was a balanced group. Really what we're focusing on is the quality. That's what we're looking at. The quality of their signing, and they're, following the CPC. If they're going to be in the community, we need to be sure that they obviously have enough qualifications in fields like medical or legal, mental health as well. In those specialty areas, it's important that we have clear communication in those areas. That's the goal. My biggest concern, based on my experience from Pennsylvania, their licensure rule is quite strict. I didn't like interpreters who were hearing that could graduated from an IEP, ITP, took the test and thought, I can't remember clearly, it might have been, 2 to 3 years that they were taking the performance exam. They had passed the knowledge portion or the written portion. They were working with a provisional licensure in that case so that they could demonstrate improvement in skill. Once they passed the performance test, then that was a different story. If they did not pass the performance test, then they were no longer permitted to have a provisional license without certification. If they were in training, that was a different story. As far as deaf interpreters go, it's a different situation. They must pass the knowledge and the performance portion to be a deaf interpreter. And really, in my opinion, they were limited on Pennsylvania with the scope of work that they could do as deaf interpreters. Once they passed the knowledge portion, then there was a moratorium several years ago, you remember, with the performance test for RID. At the time when I was in Pennsylvania, that was, I didn't feel like that was fair to me. It felt like a real inequality as far as deaf interpreters and interpreters go. Once you pass the written or knowledge portion and you work for a few years, you should be able to take the performance the same as a hearing interpreter. Shouldn't be any preference. That's my concern as we're developing this in Tennessee.
And Chrissy's saying, thank you for that feedback. All right, Eric.
Okay. I right when I joined, I heard at least I think Chrissy maybe was sort of giving a summary. Where were you talking about that there's going to be a second round because of a neutral site, or there wasn't a neutral site or something?
That was in Chattanooga. We had a meeting at the Partnership Family Services office. And I don't know. I mean, we don't know where it's going to be when they're going to have a second one, but they want a neutral location.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
I have some general concerns, Lisa is saying. That the standards of the meeting are not the same. We've had 3 and 3. So the comparison, I mean, it's apples to oranges. You can't really compare them. Amy said, I agree. The first 3 that occurred at Bridges proposed like rules or proposed a registry, but the meetings in Knoxville and Chattanooga did not mention that. So it seems that without that standard in data collection, then it would be difficult to compare the two. It won't work to compare. That's my opinion.
And Chrissy said she agrees. Eric?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Bridges did not propose the registry. That was an idea that came out of the group from the deaf community. So we didn't say here's 2 options or anything like that. We were talking about licensure, and someone from the deaf community said, well, is there a way we could just see a list of who's certified like a registry? So that was the idea. And then the other folks in the room really, yeah, at least here in Nashville, really like that idea. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
And Chrissy
Thanks.
says, okay, great.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Megan.
Any more comments? Any more comments? All set? Beth?
I think I have a little bit of concern about that. That's one reason I wanted to reach out and have someone from that's been conducting them, because I'm not sure how to present all of it, and I'm also not sure that I could answer everybody's questions about the differences. So, and it feels like it'd be more neutral if it was somebody outside, not somebody in my center, necessarily running the meeting. So I appreciate y'all being willing to maybe zoom in, or we'd love to have you, but I know it's a long trip. But we would, and I don't know how many people will have to participate. We'll do the best we can. We'll try to encourage people to come. So.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
Chrissy
comments?
said, any more comments? All right, looks good. Seems like everybody said what they need to. We haven't really moved on. Since we're still in the data collection stage. When we finish that stage, hopefully, we'll have more standardization. That's certainly the goal. So that we can look at different areas and compare them. My goal, between the work group and the community, is to go back and forth between those two, to get feedback from the community and take it back to the work group. I want to be clear that we're not making, unilateral decisions in the work group. Another thing that we did do, the statewide virtual meeting that we discussed. I don't know, if who's going to show up, when we'll have time for that, but Megan and I did discuss figuring our schedule. We have a lot of commitments with going back to Chattanooga, and is it okay if we do the virtual statewide session in November rather than the end of October? Does that sound all right for everyone? And Leonard says before the holidays. Chrissy said, right, exactly. Yeah, that's what we were considering, perhaps early November, so that, we could provide that statewide. Lisa, go right ahead. If we do that virtual after the council meeting, which is on November 3rd, I can announce it during we can announce it rather during the council meeting. Yeah. That would be great. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Just let people know about that at the council meeting. Eric, do you know any more as far as the community meeting in Memphis that occurred in Memphis? I'd like to know what the result of that was.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Hold on one second. It might take me a second if you want to talk about something else very quickly. I have to go through my emails, but I think a summary was found out or was sent out. Hold on one second.
We
Okay,
can
I
wait
was
for
just
you. It's
checking the
okay.
chat and I missed what you said, Chrissy.
I
Sorry.
got it.
Oh,
I got it. I got you. Very informal interpreting. Whoever sees it gets it.
yes. And Amy said, since I'm not doing any interpreting into English, I'll be signing.
Well, you can join our madhouse here. End of the year, we had like 20 some odd thousand to spend on medical equipment. So we've gotten like 160 pieces of equipment in the last 2 days, and trying to inventory it and find places to store it. I just had 20 wheelchairs shipped at our doorstep. So it's just crazy here. Got on my tennis shoes. If Eric hadn't announced he was going to be late, I would have forgotten it. It popped up on my watch. I'm like, what's he gonna be late for? And I thought, oh my gosh, I am too.
Move it too loud, please. Would you turn it down? Whomever is talking, please turn it down. Okay, quiet, please.
Okay, I found a quick I found a quick summary. It basically said that the majority did want us to work on licensure, that they were in support of it, that they were very excited to be a part of the conversation. They had mentioned that they feel overlooked often, so they were excited that they were involved. There was concern about the timing was an issue. They didn't want it to take place immediately because they didn't want some of their interpreters to not be able to work for them. So they wanted to participate in feedback and shaping any of the proposed bill. And they wanted to try to find some volunteers to participate in the work group to represent Memphis. We did have to clarify, sort of like what you guys just talked about, the difference between certification and licensure. They were asking about VRI and if that would impact VRI interpreters, because they had expressed concern about some interpreters they had with VRI they didn't understand. So that was a question that they wanted the group to address or mention in some capacity. And there were a lot of questions about EIPA and just the educational interpreter licensure. There were just some clarification between that and national certification. Yeah, and this all went out in an email. It looks like that Nancy sent out to you guys as well at the beginning of September. So that was just the summary where she sent the summary of East and West. But I do know there was a couple of people in Memphis who talked to us afterwards who they just didn't want their interpreters to not be able to work because they like their interpreters there, but they know that they're not certified. So they just wanted to make sure that the timing didn't impact. That was the big thing. I feel like that came out of that meeting that Brenda brought back to us mostly.
I'm gonna SimCom here. I typically don't, but Eric, did you clarify the EIPA is not a certification in Memphis? That it's an
Yes.
assessment, or did someone clarify that?
Yes, yes. So that was just a question that they were asking, and we explained that they already have their own process and all that stuff. Yeah, it was just reason I brought that up was because I think that as we go out into the state to talk about what we're doing, that seems to come up a couple of times, just some confusion around that. So that just needs to be a point that we clarify. That's all. But yes, that was made clear that that's not any type of national certification or yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Great, because we had that same question in Knoxville too. People don't seem to understand the difference between assessment and certification and licensure. So clarifying that is helpful. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Eric, for your summary. I appreciate it. That helps me a lot. It helps me understand better what's happening there, because I already mentioned in an email, a blurb in the email, but there are other community members in Memphis. I understand that's a different group of people who they have contacted us and asked questions about what we've been doing. And I gave them some general information, but about the 7 post-it notes and pieces of paper and all that. And they said they're going to follow that same structure. and they invited Megan and I to be there via Zoom. And so that's a different group of people, but that community, it's not Bridges. And I don't know that they're affiliated with any other organization. They just wanted to do it themselves. So I just was curious. And so that's what, I wanted to share that with you as well. So that's what's going on right now.
And we'll share all of our notes from that meeting that's community led as well.
So one thing I want to make sure that we have statewide, or, as these meetings are going on, there are some people who are really involved with other specific agencies, and they might not know about the general meetings. And so I was just talking to a deaf woman, a friend of mine, and she had no idea about the Nashville meeting because she didn't know anything about licensure. And so maybe we could focus on how to advertise so that it's not only going through the agencies, but also so that it's widely distributed so that everyone is included. And that way, anyone who wants to be included in the work group or wants to be included in the process can be. So that's just something to think about going forward. And Chrissy said, I appreciate that. Yeah, have that person get in touch with me, and then I'll get her up to speed, or him.
We did get some feedback in Knoxville about the fact that all of us are educated people who work in the field of interpreting and deafness. So we were advised to recruit some grassroots deaf people to work in the work group, not workshop, work group. Yes. So if you all have any connections or know people that would be willing to be involved that are not on a similar level as us, I would appreciate that.
Well,
Leonard is saying a name. What was the name again? Jenny Kramer is interested. And I don't know if Andrew sent that to you, Chrissy. Chrissy said no. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give that person my email. That'd be great.
We've had several people say that they're interested, but then I don't know if they feel overwhelmed or what, but nobody's really come forward. So I'm trying to encourage them. Time will tell. Yeah, maybe just give them a little reminder. All right, any more concerns that you want to bring up now? I mean, this is a good time to share. It's good discussion.
One thing I think, as far as convincing the legislators in our description, I partly feel with bringing statistics and numbers, that would be a convincing feature to show those lists and what we're discussing when we're negotiating. Anybody? I think before we move on, that would be without evidence. We need to have some evidence and data that will convince the legislators lined up as a model for our ideas. I think that would be a good thing to do. Lisa.
I'll go ahead and SimCom too. Typically I don't, but I will. That way nobody else has to voice for me. But I mean, this is a little bit of the elephant in the room. But one of the things that I know, I read the email. I was in Knoxville where there was a big group of people who were very, very concerned about what's going to happen to the old draft. I am obviously, I mean, as an academic, if nothing else, I'm obviously strongly in favor of collecting the data, which is why I was concerned that the data was not collected in the same way, because I think it's going to weaken it tremendously. I don't know how to fix that now. I mean, kind of the horse is out of the barn, but still, there may be a way to fix it and go back. I don't know. But anyway, as we collect data, and I may be jumping ahead, and if I am, that's fine. But I think it would be good for someone to directly address what will happen with the other bill. Some of the things that I've heard, I mean, I kind of know because I was a little bit there, but I was not in this role. I was actually interpreting at that point. So, pre-COVID, and it was before I came back to the state. I was teaching at UT. So my role was different, which has changed my perception tremendously. But I think if we could help the people who are very, very concerned, they'd be better to be allies and working with us than against us. And I think by continuing to not answer what's going to happen with that old draft, it's just causing more and more resentment. And we saw it happening in Knoxville, and it's going to be spreading out too. I've also heard it in Nashville already. So for what that's worth, I think it would be really good for us to move forward with a plan for, what's going to happen and try to get those people back, because they did do a lot of work, and it was reviewed by 2 lawyers. So it was ready to go to the legislature. And my understanding is it did, and then was turned down. So we could maybe use that to make an even stronger case. It's just my thought, to a stronger bill this time. Use the data to add and bring it up to speed, and then make a better case for it this time, if that's the direction that we choose to go. Or if it's, to be honest, if it's going to be just thrown out, be honest about that too, so that people will stop grumbling about it, or can grumble in their own space.
So I'd like to add with that, as far as data goes, there was something brought up in Knoxville about surveys sending out, and just like with the number of people who can come to like physical meetings, that's limited, and maybe people can't join virtual meetings too. If we could send out like a survey statewide to deaf people, deaf, hard of hearing, interpreters, all of them, to get feedback in that way, I think that would be a stronger support as well. So surveys is something to think about. Also, 3 things. The previous draft, I think it's worth keeping some of like the terms and the definitions. When we're finished with the current stage of collecting data, we can look at that and see if it matches what we're thinking. And I agree with Lisa. We want these people as our friends and not our enemies, because already in Knoxville, if I'm honest with you, the facial expressions, it was a lot to try to present something from a neutral perspective and say, we want you to comment. But the feeling that we are doing something quickly is not going to go well with people that worked for 5 years, I think, on the previous draft. So keeping those people friends would help me personally and also professionally, of course.
I think it's really important that we continue to help people understand that we're not rushing through this, that we're still collecting data. And we've had 1 meeting in each place, that's all. So that's not really enough we have to set up in a variety of places, reach a variety of people, and try to do our due diligence to make sure that we collect everything, as much data as possible, because it's really important that we do this for the deaf community, with the deaf community. And we want to make sure that we're ethical and that we are also working with the interpreters and the interpreting community. So, I mean, we just have to make them understand that we're not in a hurry. I mean, that's my opinion, but whatever we do whatever we have to do to convey that, I mean, I have some concerns with the old draft. At that time, we made some revisions, but I think it's really important that we include everyone too. Thanks. And I'll add my 3 things as well, just as a follow-up. Many of the same things, but I think it's important that we review the draft. Yes, I mean, we're going to have to do that at the right time. Second, I mean, maybe I'm kind of just thinking about my own stuff here, but I know maybe a mini conference, maybe we could host that with deaf people and interpreters who come together and all come to the same time. I mean, we'd have to find a place to do it, but where people would support it. But then we could come together and people can see each other. People from West, people from East, people from the North and the Northeast. But that way, it's not so divided. And then at the same time, we can see more people there as well and have more voices and more opportunity for discussion. I would love to see that happen. And then I agree with you. We can't rush this. I mean, it's really important that we look at the people who support this, and we want to make sure that we get it to a place where the legislature will support it and we have key people behind us and backing us, rather than just taking it there willy-nilly and people don't really care. So I know people are going to complain about us, and that's, part of dealing with the community. But definitely anything that we can stay in contact, advertise better, I mean, whatever, and record these meetings so that people can see what we're doing. Transparency is the key.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Leonard. Leonard's adding, I see some tension for the consequences that follow in Pennsylvania, or we need to have some consequences if people don't obey the licensure requirements. There was a fine in Pennsylvania where they had to pay if they weren't certified. And for licensure, I mean, if you're not certified and you're not licensed, then there should be a similar consequence for that. Deaf people and the deaf community, that's not going to end well. And the point is, I mean, if people get fired because of, an interpreter is not doing their job, and this, that consequence is a real issue for the deaf person. What is the consequence for the interpreter? I've personally seen that. I mean, especially deaf people in rural areas, they need to have access to communication. That's important.
Any more comments? Beth, Eric, anybody? We just lost Eric. I do have one thing. I mean, I looked at the first draft. Megan and I looked at the first draft. I think it's really important that we do a second draft.
Second round,
sorry. Why don't you take it? I think I've missed the point.
We just want to narrow down concerns to see, we want to have a more complete picture of what the community thinks. That is vital. We also want to recruit more people to bring to the discussion. The second round is necessary. And Amy said, I agree. Okay. Beth, do you have any comments or thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, since we haven't had one yet, I don't really know how our community's going to feel about it.
Right.
I hope they have some feelings about it, because right now we're kind of, we're kind of spread out. So sometimes I don't think there's as much cohesion in our communities there may be in some of the larger areas.
Okay, I'll send you mentioned second round of meetings, and I wonder if there would be a reason to have a second round in Nashville. Chrissy said that's not a bad idea, and maybe Johnson City too, because I mean, the people that are working on this have a standard set of questions that we've asked, and I don't feel like I have a real complete picture of what happened in Nashville and what happened in Johnson City. I know I asked people to go to those meetings, but really I would prefer to be there. Okay, Chrissy. Okay, who's going? Lenny, go ahead, Lenny. There were more deaf than interpreters, with only a few interpreters, perhaps maybe 3 or 4. There were probably, between 20 and 25 deaf people in Johnson City. I know because the interpreters didn't have any idea of the meeting, or they were concerned about attending the meeting. And Chrissy said because of the location. Okay, Amy, ready? Okay, yeah, that was my point, Chrissy. I feel like if we did have another round in Nashville, I feel like more coworkers, interpreters would show up. They were anxious about Bridges' opinion and their judgment, having the meeting there at Bridges. A meeting at a neutral location would be better. Now, understand, I don't feel like that it would be appropriate to have it at SLS, which is the agency that I run right now, because it's still not neutral. We would need to find a community location that is neutral, or that the deaf community, where the deaf community could lead that session, not at Bridges. Okay.
Beth was first.
Lisa and then
Yeah.
Beth.
So
okay, go ahead, Lisa.
I guess
Nope. Beth.
Sorry.
Okay.
I guess one question I have of if I'm glad for you all to come and attend my meeting. I don't mean this the way it's probably going to kind of sound, but I think if you have the same leadership, because that's how it will be feel, that goes to all the meetings, do you think that in some ways that could influence the outcome of all the groups more? I'm just asking. I mean, I'm asking as just to put it out there. Anyway, because I mean, I think the same reason that you're probably bringing up about Bridges and partnership and all that is the same thing, because there's kind of a built-in perception of what that group, that entity might prefer, maybe skewing the meetings. And I think we have to be careful as a group to look at it from this point of view too, that as a group, it could skew it. We could skew it too, not meaning to, but we could. So I don't know. It's just, I just put it out there. Cause I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to have, I think that's why when you talk about a survey would be really good. Cause I think a survey in a way kind of takes out that everybody else in the room kind of thing, and sometimes somebody might feel something about it. And then when they're in the room and everybody else is going, oh, but I think we should have, it does move the needle. We tend to either want to go with that group, or if we don't like them, we may want to go the other way. I don't know.
Megan said groupthink. So that kind of tags on to what I was thinking. This is just an idea. But what if the first round that has mostly already happened, sponsored by the centers and communities? What if the second round was sponsored by TRID? Then it could be neutral play. Is that a bad idea? I'm looking at Megan's expression. I think her head just blew up. I'm sorry. And Amy's saying one of the problem with that. Wait just a
I
second.
can SimCom. The kids are
Okay.
outside now.
Okay.
One problem with that is that most of us who are involved with TRID are also in the work group. You know what I mean? So like I'm the Nashville lead in Nashville for TRID. So I would still be the one trying to run it. So it's still not completely neutral.
Maybe TAD? We don't have any representation tonight or this afternoon from TAD, but for me, that feels like the most neutral group, the most heavy interest in interpreter licensure.
Chrissy's saying, and also, I mean, TAD, yeah, that'd be a great idea. It's perfect, but it's important. I know it's going to be hard, but that it's deaf led. And then we have an interpreter who's also experienced and seasoned. And so they could work side by side so that we can see people working together. It's not just one group or the other. I mean, in my experience, people tend to look and, oh, deaf, hearing, and if there's a balance, then that provides some neutrality as well, involving both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to feel connected, and each group wants to feel connected, and that offers some neutrality, but also it's in the back of my mind. I mean, if it comes, if that's possible, that might be something we could do. Eric,
Yeah,
then Lisa.
Okay,
Sorry, I
thank you.
didn't see you, Eric.
Oh, that's okay. I just joined back, so I ditched the laptop and now have a direct connection, so I can help interpret or SimCom or whatever now. I know. So
Finally, Amy said.
so with TAD, I'm just wondering what's the membership like now? I know before it was like everyone in Tennessee was a member of it. Does it have good representation from across the state now? I haven't really seen what the numbers are or who is involved in TAD right now. Chrissy says, yeah, so I can share some information with everyone because we're partnering with TAD on an upcoming event. I think there's about 40 that are strongly involved. To understand that though, Nashville has its own group and Knoxville has its own group. So, and those groups are smaller in number. But there is a biannual conference that's going to be happening at KCD. So we'll have sort of a representation of that number at that conference. So I'm not sure prior to that, but I'm happy to reach out to Randall to get more information about that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Eric, I can comment a little bit about that. Membership in TAD has decreased over the years, but I know that Nashville still has a strong number of members, Knoxville still has a strong number of members, and probably like the most members, I would say, maybe Lenny can discuss this, but probably in Johnson City, that kind of, he said
Yeah.
membership is decreasing. I would say probably, not more than 10. Oh, well, I was mistaken then.
Okay, I mean, because I agree. I think the TAD is a good group to lead or host or whatever the case is. Lisa, is BDA, is that completely gone? I know in Memphis it was like the only one left, but I'm not
Yeah, I
sure if
think it's
that's even
completely
still
gone
there.
now.
It's completely gone.
I think
The
so.
Black
Black
Death
Death.
Advocates. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just spitballing, but just to give you a little bit of background, since our last TCD DBHH meeting, I've really been thinking a lot about how we approached the motion, which, to be honest, Robert's Rules of Order and is not our strongest point. I mean, we're doing better, but it's not our strongest suit. So I think things got rushed and people got going, and I wanted them to be motivated and want to be involved. But now I've taken some steps back. And what I plan to discuss at the council in November with the council members is that after attending several of these workshops, the ones that I was able to, which actually has just been Knoxville, I wasn't invited to the others, and then the Jackson one I would like to go if possible. And Chattanooga, there was some overlap that night, so I couldn't go. But one thing I'm wondering now, I don't want to lead these meetings. I don't want to.
Right.
But we have a chair. The one thing that I'm going to propose to TCD DBHH is that instead of taking a side, supporting or not supporting, because we are an advisory board, I think more appropriately for our role, it would be to wait until all of the data is collected, see what the general consensus is, and then as a group, before it goes to the legislature, we'll discuss and decide, will we support it or will we not support it as a neutral council? So as a neutral council, if TAD does not mobilize and want to take over, perhaps they could be sponsored by TCD DBHH as data collection meetings, as feedback meetings, completely neutral. Completely neutral. So a moderator, and then let people, I mean, without like, it could be a vehicle for getting out the survey distribution. It could be a way to collect feedback, but all under the heading of neutrality, complete neutrality, because I think we should not have jumped to get involved. And I have told John Johnson this just like an hour ago. He's very enthusiastic and wants to see Chattanooga have that second meeting. And he's a great like grassroots person to recruit. But it's just a thought, and I'm sure it's a thought that I will regret sharing. I'm going to be honest. But we are set up to be a neutral body. And I've been trying to explain that to people for a while now. And so perhaps this could be a way to help people understand that we are neutral. We are only there to facilitate discussion. And that's it. And then whatever the results of that discussion, that's it. And then we either decide to support as the legal body that we are, because we're not a commission. We don't have funding to go out and do. We don't have any of that. We only have the ability to advise. Maybe this is a good place to exercise that. I don't know. Thoughts?
Mamie said, I love that idea because it would standardize. The commission could provide or the commission has standards for meetings and proposals, if that makes sense. Help me out.
Sorry, there's a lot going on. I mean, it'll be standard how it's presented, right? So one of your concerns was some of the meetings look different than other meetings, but if the council's hosting all of the meetings, that means they'll look the same. And it's the same data being collected, right? So it's a good thing.
The goal. That means that either me or Marina or both would have to go to all the meetings, which I'm fine with. We just have to work with my schedule. I mean, for second round. And I think it's something that I should talk about with the council in November.
Leonard's asking, so who is actually on the council?
We have 18 council members. I can tell you the ones that I know right off my head. We have 2 deaf representatives, 2 hard of hearing representatives, 1 deafblind, and this is all written into the law this way. 1 minority representative who happens to be deafblind, just happened that way. So right now we have, from those 6, 3 identify as deafblind, including one of the hard of hearing people. She identifies as visually impaired and hard of hearing, but still qualifies as deafblind. Then we have various state agencies as written into the law, and other agencies like TAD has their president representative, Randall Haggard. Megan serves as TRID delegate. We have TRA, which is the Tennessee Regulatory Authority, and they are involved because they run the equipment provision services like TDAP and I Can Connect for equipment for deafblind. We have the Department of Safety, the Department or Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, the Department of Health, the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. Who am I forgetting, Megan?
Asking, do we have mandatory deaf on that council?
9 and 9. It's not set up in the law to be majority deaf, but it just so happens right now we have 9 deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, 9 hearing. I don't count because I'm not actually a member of the council. I'm not included in the 18.
Okay.
And Lenny saying, so that's not neutral to me from my perspective. We have more deaf people involved, then we can discuss supporting that. But at this stage, I don't agree that that's, neutral, as they say.
Well, neutral means even. So it was just a suggestion. I'm happy to take it out.
Neutral means that the perspective and the voice of the deaf community is heard. Not that there is, you know, some unbalanced view. I recommend 51% deaf people on the board. That's the standard with other states and also at the federal level, the percentage.
Our
That's
law
my
is
view.
not written that way. That's the reason why we wish that some of the state agencies had deaf or deafblind or hard of hearing people that they could send, but so far they don't.
That's something that we can consider changing in the future.
Good luck with that. I mean, I'm not against it. I just know it's a lot to change a law. Obviously, that's the reason why we're here.
Mhm. Okay, Chrissy's saying, I see Amy. I don't mean to interrupt, but I need to go soon. I think that we're already on the next, or we're on the same page for the next steps. What are we thinking about the next step? Like I said, the goal is to have the second round and have the same structure that we've had so far. We've had 7 so far. Oh, thank you. We've had 7 questions so far. And we're not going to use those same questions for the second round. We'll go back to the first round to look at what we found. And then the second round, we'll have more analysis and perhaps get more feedback from the community. That's what we can analyze.
I have to go. I have to-
I'm thinking the second round, we can meet in October.
Bye, Beth.
Bye, sorry.
And who will lead? But